Hey, John, how are you?
Good. Busy.
It is busy.
Did you go to
I was at the airport and they canceled my flight. Carolyn did that one, and she's going to Charlottetown tomorrow. Okay, we're about ready to start up again. We have two more sessions to get through before lunch, so if everyone could please take their seats. I need a tell them to move it. Okay, so let's get started so that we can break in time for lunch, because lunch will be served on time. Okay. So now we're going to move into the Canada-Korea Free Trade Agreement, and we're going to hear from Stephen Gooden, who is the Minister Counselor and Senior Trade Commissioner at the Embassy of Canada to the Republic of Korea based in Seoul. He's been a trade commissioner since 1996. He's also served Canadian businesses in Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Germany. He's held a number of trade policy assignments, and he's been in Seoul since 2016. So welcome, Stephen.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Let me say it's great to see so many people come today to learn more about the Korean and other Asian markets. Well, I'm the odd one out here, of course, because this CPTPP, Korea is not a member of the CPTPP, although it's been thinking about joining for at least 5 years. But don't worry, because Canada and Korea have their own trade agreement. It also has a 5-letter abbreviation, and it also starts with C. It's the CKFTA. Not as poetically named as the CPTPP, just plain old Canada-Korea Free Trade Agreement that has been in effect for just over 4 years. But the organization that I and my colleagues represent from other Canadian embassies, the Trade Commissioner Service, has a 3-year strategic objective of diversifying Canada's exports and of increasing the number of Canadian exporters. And if you're talking about trade with Asia, you can't ignore the Korean market. But in contrast to my colleagues who have talked about how CPTPP will help Canadian businesses, I'll focus my presentation on how CKFTA has increased Canada's exports to Korea over the last 4 years. So to the extent that CPTPP markets are similar to Korea, this might give you some insight into sectors and products that are going to grow over the coming years into the CPTPP markets, as well as show you some of the products that Canada exports that are doing well in that market. I'll also give you some tips about how to take advantage of the CKFTA to do business in Korea. mainly by using the support of the Trade Commissioner Service in Seoul, which is the group that I manage and represent here today. I have a lot to cover, so let's get started. First, let me give you some context. South Korea is about the same size as New Brunswick plus half of Nova Scotia. As you can see on these maps, which are to the same scale, you can get from the capital Seoul, which is in the top left-hand corner of the country, down to Busan, the second largest city, in the bottom right-hand corner of the country, in about 2.5 hours on the train, high-speed train. It costs less than $100. But there the comparison ends. Korea's population is larger than Canada's. The capital city and its metropolitan area are one of the largest cities in the world. About half the country's population lives there. Koreans know quite a lot about Canada, and they like our country. There are several reasons for this. First of all, there are a lot of Canadians living in Korea. Lots of Koreans come to Canada for vacation, with over 260,000 overnight visits last year. There are a lot of Koreans studying in Canada. It's our third largest source of international students, even though Vietnam's growing fast. Although only 270 Koreans studied in Atlantic Canada in 2018. There's lots of room for growth there. If you know anything about history, you've heard of the Korean War. It destroyed the country by the time it ended in 1953 and killed over 1 million people, including more than 500 Canadians. But the country subsequently embarked on a period of amazing economic growth, so that today it is the world's 11th largest economy, has a GDP about the same size as Canada's, and it has continued economic growth that make this one of Asia's most attractive, dynamic, and advanced markets. Because it has few natural resources, it's also a large importer. Almost all natural resources and food, for example, are imported. Its economy is very much based on manufacturing. You, of course, have heard of Hyundai and Kia car brands, Samsung and LG consumer electronics, and so on. There are lots of opportunities for foreign suppliers in a range of sectors, and I'll talk briefly about how you can access the Korean market a bit later. However, it's also a very competitive market. The CKFTA that came into effect in 2015 was only one of quite a few FTAs that Korea has signed, including FTAs with markets that are much more important to Korea than Canada's. Korea's first bilateral FTA came into effect in 2007. It has had one with the European Union since 2011. It's had one with the US since 2012. And in 2014 and 15 came agreements with Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and China, among others. So as you know, and as I'll explain more later on, Canada's FTA gives Canadian exporters a level playing field with competitors from other countries, including with Korean companies. But it doesn't give us more favorable treatment than those other competitors. FTAs are about creating the conditions for Canadian businesses to compete fairly with companies from those other countries. But Canadians still need to do the hard work of business development and pursuing new opportunities to take advantage of the agreements. So as you can see here, in the first 11 months of 2018, which is the latest data available, South Korea was Canada's 6th largest export destination and our 6th largest source of imports. This is just goods, but in addition, Canadian services exports to Korea in 2017, which is the latest available, were worth $973 million, which was over $100 million more than in 2016, which in turn was more than $100 million worth more than in 2015. So obviously a lot of growth there too. I should note as well that this presentation is only about South Korea. Canada has almost no trade with North Korea. Of course, it's under very strong economic sanctions by all members of the United Nations due to its aggressive nuclear and missile programs. So let's look in more detail about what Canada exports to Korea. As you can see, mined natural resources account for over half of Canada's total exports, with coal, copper, iron, aluminum being all being substantial. And the prices of these commodities tend to vary from year to year, which can lead to wide swings in the value of our exports to Korea. Exports of wood products, manufactured goods, and agri-food account for roughly equal shares, around 10 to 15% each. There's a few highlights in 2018. As you can see, the exports of passenger aircraft went from zero to $271 million. That was an export of 10 of the Bombardier C-Series aircraft, now known as the Airbus A220, to Korean Airlines. Korean oil refiners also imported some Canadian crude for the first time to test in their refineries in anticipation of greater volumes in the future as the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion project proceeds. But overall, there was relatively high growth of Canadian exports to Korea last year at 8%, higher than in the same period in 2017. So if we zoom into Atlantic Canada, look at what is exported from this region, we can see some of those same products with a big emphasis on seafood. You'll notice that iron ore, the third item there, from Newfoundland was down substantially. And again, that's an example of what I mentioned just now, that it's not unusual to see big fluctuations from year to year in individual natural resource exports to Korea or to other countries. And then from Nova Scotia, you can see that the obvious winner as I will show you, actually, the obvious winner from CKFTA implementation has been exports of lobster. They've grown strongly over the last 4 years, live lobster that is, and that's certainly been helped by a Korean air cargo flight 747 that flies from Halifax to Seoul every week, sometimes twice a week, and it's full of live lobster. There was a slight decline this year, but the exports of frozen lobster more than made up for it. And in case you're interested, here are the top 25 products that Canada imported from Korea last year. As you can see, there's lots of cars, car parts, including, down on the left column, plug-in electric cars, which are growing fast, hybrid electric cars in the second column. And of course, nobody can forget mobile phones, number 2 item. So I'll turn now to the CKFTA. Until CPTPP came into force on December 30th, the CKFTA was Canada's only free trade agreement in the Asia-Pacific region. The most immediate impact of CKFTA was that on January 1st, 2015, Korean import duties on most products were eliminated, or if not, a phase-out process began. Import duties are cut on January 1st of each year until they reach zero. So at the moment, this year, 95% of Canada's exports to Korea enter duty-free. And upon full implementation of the agreement in 2032, Korean tariffs will be eliminated on 99.75% of Canada's current exports. Now, elimination of these duties has been particularly advantageous for Canadian businesses because before the agreement came into effect, the average import duty imposed by Korea was 13%. Now, some of Canada's largest natural resource exports to Korea, coal, iron ore, copper, and zinc, they were not directly affected by the CKFTA. Korea didn't charge import duties on them before our free trade agreement came into effect. Oh, now what's happening here? I see. Now, the slides are out of order, I'm afraid. Anyway, let me jump ahead. No. I will flip to the slide that I am looking for. Okay. So there are a lot of factors that affect exports to a particular country, as you well know. The economic situation in the importing country has a big impact on demand there. Commodity prices, exchange rates, and other factors that are influenced by the global economy change. And then, of course, there are domestic factors in Canada, such as changes in shipping costs, taxes, and so on, even weather in the case of agricultural products. So all these factors interact, and it's hard to separate them out. However, there's a very strong case to be made that CKFTA has had a very positive effect on how much Korea imports from Canada. So as this graph shows, Korean imports from Canada in 2018 were 24% higher than in 2014, the year before CKFTA came into effect and the cuts in import duties began. As we've already seen, though, a large proportion of these, of our exports, coal, iron ore, copper, zinc, didn't have an import duty on them before CKFTA came into effect. And also, they're commodities that Korea can get from a variety of sources depending on the price. So as I've mentioned already, their import volumes tend to vary from year to year. So in this graph, I've stripped out those commodities to give a better sense of the exports and how the exports from Canada to Korea have actually been affected by the CKFTA by focusing just on those products where import duties were cut. And as you can see, exports of those goods have risen from 2014 to 2018 by 32%. And last of all, I'd like to mention that these rates of increase were much higher than Canada experienced for its global exports to the entire world. So when we look at all goods, Canada's exports increased by 12% in the last 4 years, compared to 24% for exports to Korea. And when we strip out those natural resources, the effect is even more pronounced, and the rate of growth of Canada's exports to Korea was almost 3 times as fast as our growth of exports to the rest of the world. So now let's look at how this happened by reviewing how exports of specific products benefited from CKFTA implementation. And I will go back a little bit to this slide. So a few minutes ago, I showed you a list of the top 25 products exported from Atlantic Canada to South Korea. So on this slide, I've taken out a few of them as examples to show the effects of CKFTA. These products were not exported exclusively from Atlantic Canada, but certainly this region accounted for a significant share of them. Here we have 6 products for which there's a good case to be made that trade liberalization, as negotiated in the CKFTA, had tangible positive benefits for Canada and for Atlantic Canada exporters in particular. So it's easiest to see in the case of live lobster. As the import duty declined from 20% in 2014, exports more than doubled over the following couple of years and now are, well, heading for a tripled. Similarly, frozen lobster went up by more than 10 times in the last 4 years. 2019 will be the first year when Canadian frozen lobster enters the Korean market at a 0% import duty, so certainly we can hope to see another increase in those numbers this year. And the effect was even more pronounced for French fries. Other products shown here had a weaker but still significant effect on the value of exports as the Korean duty declined. Another way of looking at the effect of CKFTA is to look at Canada's market share over the same period. So I've checked a few of them. For French fries, Canada's market share of Korean imports rose from 4% in 2014 to 15% in 2018. And over the same period, the US market share declined from 90% to 72%. For live lobster, Canadian market share rose from 44% to 79% over the same period, and the US share, unfortunately, fell from 56% to 21%. Here are some more examples of goods exported from elsewhere in Canada that show the correlation between the reduction in Korean import duties and increased exports from Canada. Perhaps these goods and the ones on the preceding slide give you an idea of how Canadian exports might also benefit from CPTPP implementation. Now, I know that some of these cuts are not huge annual reductions in import duties or huge annual increases in exports every year, but certainly the benefits add up over time. Even small reductions in import duties faced by Canadian products translate into better competitiveness for our exporters. And when you add up all these little cuts in import duties affecting a wide range of products across the whole country, the overall result is quite significant and positive for the Canadian economy. So there's a lot of information on this slide and the preceding one, but 2 observations are apparent. First of all, although there was a jump in some of the products and then strong growth over the last 4 years, they didn't always go up. Sometimes they fell. And also, even after the duty fell to 0, there was still some growth in exports from Canada of those products in the years following that reduction to 0 of the duty. Now, where am I? So the reason for that is that CKFTA is only one of Korea's FTAs, as I've mentioned. The Korean market opened up for Canadian exporters just as it already had for European companies and US companies. All these free trade agreements increase the amount of competition in the Korean market. But the CKFTA, no FTA, is sufficient on its own for Canadian exporters to increase their sales to another country. To do that, individual companies have to go out and actively develop their business in that market. And of course, it takes time to develop those relationships. So even after the duty fell to zero, we saw some continued growth in our exports to those markets, to Korea. So for the rest of the time, I'll talk briefly about how the office that I represent, the Trade Commissioner Service in Seoul, can help you to do that. So there's our team. Our office consists of 4 Canadian diplomats, one of them is myself, and 12 local employees, each of whom has a specialized knowledge of and a network of contacts in one or more business sectors. So I've talked a lot about trade today, as have the other presenters, but we also have officers responsible specifically for innovation and for promoting Korean investment into Canada. So in the 10 months from April 2018 to January 2019, so from the start of our fiscal year up to the end of January, we provided nearly 1,000 services from our office in support of 372 clients, and almost all of them are SMEs. And we made a significant contribution to 62 business deals by our clients. Now, we welcome service requests by our clients at any time. For example, we can do a background check on a potential business partner, or we can provide you with a tailored list of business contacts. But we also plan and deliver certain proactive initiatives each year, in particular to give new clients a path to get into the Korean market. And here are some examples of upcoming events that we have planned in Seoul in a couple of sectors of interest in Atlantic Canada. If you'd like to know more about these, I'd be happy to talk to you during the lunch or in the one-on-ones in the afternoon, or, of course, feel free to contact us by email. You've already heard briefly from my colleague Terene about the funding mechanism that the TCS offers to SMEs to support international business development, CAN Export. There are some other funding mechanisms as well for more specific applications, in particular innovation. They're all oriented towards SMEs, and they're all applicable to the Korean market. Let us know before you come to Korea, especially if it's your first visit, because we can also give you some valuable tips about Korean business culture and how to make a good impression in your first B2B meetings. I'm not sure where my other slides are going. Let me just flip back here. Never mind. If you do get in touch with us, please remember that the TCS doesn't do business, can't do business on behalf of our clients. We're there to help you de-risk your market entry, to help you move faster in developing business relationships in a new market, and to identify and take advantage of business deals. So to work with us, obviously you have to represent a Canadian business, but you should also have done some research before you go into any new market. And you should have some reason that you're targeting the Korean market. Have some resources set aside for business development and have a basic business plan for the market. If you're at an earlier stage than that in your business development process, our colleagues at TCS regional offices across Canada can help you decide which international markets to first go into. And when you're dealing with the TCS in any embassy, keep in mind we have a lot of experience with business development in Korea or in the market that you're approaching. However, we won't necessarily know your company or your particular product or technology. So we're certainly better able to help you if, when you contact us, you tell us your international business model, in other words, how you plan to enter the market, the kinds of customers or end users or partners that you're targeting, the products or services that you're promoting, and in particular, what your competitive advantages are. And of course, let us know if you plan to visit the market. And all of this information that you give us is, of course, treated confidentially. So let me go to the end of my presentation again. that's the end of it. We are active on social media. There's a few Twitter feeds there that we used to share information with Canadian clients about the Korean market. If what I've said today is of interest, please feel free to get in touch with us. There's our general email address that you can use to access any of our trade commissioners. So thank you very much. And I guess I'm the panel as well. So for now on Korea, so if there are any questions about the market that I haven't answered, be free to field them. Maybe I've answered them all already. No? Well, oh. Uh-oh.
I always have a question. So you talked a lot about the market. So what are the nuances in terms of business culture in doing business in Korea?
Yes, well, it is a specific business culture, and I think it was Arun talked about Japanese business culture being very much relationship-based, and I think that's a bit of a cliche because in every country I've been in, people talk about how important relationships are, but I have noticed it being particularly pronounced in Korea. What does it mean that it's relationship-based? In practice, one of the things that Canadian businesses find difficult is that cold calls are very, very hard. It's very difficult to contact a Korean company and introduce yourself and expect them to give you the time of day. It's always best to be introduced to somebody by a mutual acquaintance. Also, relationship-based business means that people tend to be wary about who they're dealing with. They want to know that if they're going to go into a business partnership with somebody, that person is reliable, can do what they say they can do, that they're credible. And so another piece of advice we give to companies when they're introducing themselves, when they're explaining their products and their business to a potential business partner in Korea, that Korean won't necessarily know you. They might have looked at your website and get a sense of your company that way. They might see you in front of them, but who actually are you? What is your experience in Korea? If you have none, then you should really talk about your other international business experience. Try to, if you're a supplier to, in the case of seafood, maybe some big US restaurant chains. In the case of new technology, if you're supplying a European multinational in the aerospace industry, talk about those supplier relationships that you have. Mention some names in the industry that those Koreans might have heard of. That gives them a much better base to judge how serious you are and your potential to supply them over a long period of time, which is generally what they're looking for. So those are just a little bit of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, Stephen will be available in the Export Cafe this afternoon, and I know some people already have appointments. So, our final panel this morning, we've talked a lot about free trade agreements, we've talked about opportunities in markets, and now we're going to talk a little bit about programs and services that can help to get you there. So I'm going to invite our panelists who are going to talk about the tools available to Canadian businesses to do international trade to come forward and take their spot at the table. So joining me on stage, we're going to have a representative from the Trade Commissioner Service Regional Office based here in Halifax. We're going to have someone from Nova Scotia Business Inc., from the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, Export Development Canada, the Business Development Bank of Canada, and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. This feels a little bit like musical chairs. Where's the music? Is there room for everyone? Okay. So we've got about 30 minutes to go through, and then we'll leave 10 minutes at the end for questions before lunch. So what I'm going to ask our representatives here today is to introduce themselves and give us a little bit of an elevator pitch about their organization and how they help exporters, and then we'll have some specific questions. So why don't we start at the very end with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada.
Hello, everybody. Are we on? There we go. My name is Laurie Sanderson. I'm with the Market and Industry Services branch of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and I've been here for 3 weeks. So please forgive me if I don't have all the answers, but I'm learning fast. And this kind of a venue, as Mark Wood said earlier, is a wonderful venue to rub shoulders with people that are exporting and to get to know people in the business. So I'm really pleased to be here and learning all kinds of stuff. And I was really interested to hear that there's a 747 that leaves every week from Halifax to Korea, full of lobsters. Wouldn't it be great if we could get some of our wild blueberries on that same plane and help that sector that's struggling at the moment? The Market and Industry Services branch, we have offices throughout Atlantic Canada. We support the economic growth and long-term prosperity of the agriculture and agri-food industry, both domestically and internationally. We support sector development. We advance agricultural interests in both bilateral and multilateral trade negotiations. And we work closely with industry to foster a more competitive agri-food sector. How do we do that? Well, some of the ways we do it is through we have a Canadian Agricultural Partnership, or a CAP for short. Everybody likes acronyms. So the Canadian Agricultural Partnership is a 5-year, $3 billion agreement, and it was signed last year. It's in its 2nd year now. It's a cost-shared agreement with all the provinces, as well as federal-only programming to support the sector. The two in particular programs that would be particular for exporters would be the Agri-Marketing Program and the Agri-Assurance Programs. All of this is on our website if you need more information or talk to me later. Both programs cover ag and seafood. As I said, we have offices in all 4 Atlantic provinces. We have an Agricultural Trade Service Bulletin. It's a monthly bulletin. Chad McPherson's in the room with my colleague from the Halifax office, who is the editor of that. And if you want to be put on that distribution list, it's a great trade service bulletin that gives our industry people information on relevant information and events coming up and programs that they can participate in. Very quickly, in terms of export planning, we offer market research services. We have agri-food trade commissioners in 35 markets, or 35 agents in 15 markets across the globe. We offer assistance at Canadian pavilions, where we can help people cover the costs to participate in large food events like FoodX Japan, Food Hotel Asia, and so on. You can register for the Canada brand and take advantage of leveraging a suite of free marketing tools that will help differentiate your products across the globe under the Canada brand. The Agri-Marketing Program will offer financial assistance as you enter new markets for SMEs. Excuse me. And in terms of market entry, we have the Market Access Secretariat, a single window of entry into new markets. So there's lots of opportunities to take advantage of services if you're in the export business. So I'll hand it over maybe to my colleague to my right.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. My name is Darren Dijon, and I am the Director for Advisory Services at the Business Development Bank of Canada. So for those who don't know who the BDC is, we are a development bank and Crown Corporation. And basically, you probably know us through our financing arm. We provide a whole bunch of financing solutions for Canadian businesses. And being exclusively devoted to entrepreneurs, we have about 40,000 of those clients in our portfolio, and about 26 billion out in the market right now committed. We also have a growth and transition group, and that is, mezzanine level financing. So it looks a lot like equity on the books, but it's really there to help companies that are on a fast growth trajectory or looking to acquire businesses. So that involves, moving from the organic growth to buying companies to also financing management buy-ins and buyouts and so forth. We also have a venture capital arm as well. But the coolest part about the Business Development Bank is the advisory practice, which is the part that I help manage. And it really is there to help companies grow their business. So whether you're looking to increase your revenues, and obviously today, if you're looking to expand your markets globally, we have a range of solutions for that. We also help companies become as efficient as they can be, investing in the right technologies and the right automation. And then the other component of the advisory practice is organizational capabilities. So how do you make sure that the foundation of your business is right? You have the right strategy, the right financial solutions at your disposal, and HR and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of solutions that we provide, and when we look at companies that are looking to expand globally, we pretty much bring the whole portfolio to task and see how we can help them. In terms of how we're different, the advisory practice is not a for-profit component of the bank. We actually run on a cost recovery model, and we measure our success based on the impact we have with the entrepreneurs. So when we get involved with companies, we really try to see, can we have an impact, and let's try to move those stakes forward and measure those results. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Daniel Dukes. I'm a senior account manager based here in Halifax, covering the province of Nova Scotia for Export Development Canada, or EDC for short. Also would like to point out my colleague Daniel Putnam, who is in the audience over there and will be participating in the Export Cafe this afternoon as well. So Export Development Canada, for those of you who do not know, was founded in 1944. We basically operate on commercial principles, and we are financially self-sustaining. We do receive our mandate from the federal government, and that mandate is to support Canadian direct and indirect exporters. And I always like to pay or call out the indirect exporter portion of that comment. A lot of people think of an exporter as a company that builds or produces a product or services here in Canada and then ships that product or services outside of Canada. Export Development Canada's definition of export is much broader than that. So if you are within the supply chain of an exporter, we do consider you an exporter as well. So I always like to note that, and we can bring the majority of our products and services into play for your company. As an organization, we really have four key groups of services. The first is risk mitigation. One of the flagship products under that particular umbrella is accounts receivable insurance or portfolio credit insurance, where we can actually insure you against non-payment by a foreign buyer, and we would protect you for up to 90% of a non-payment. The second major program that we have under that umbrella is political risk insurance. So if you have assets or funds sitting in a foreign jurisdiction and there is a risk of basically political interference, we have certain insurances there in place to take care of you there as well. The second primarily umbrella of services is financial. So if you as an organization, if you're talking to your bank or you're talking to other funders and you're unable to access the financing you need to take advantage of the opportunities that are out there, our organization has a couple of products that can help. Our Export Guarantee Program, or EGP for short, allows us to provide your financial institution a AAA sovereign guarantee in support of your financing ask. So what we do, in essence, is we de-risk the deal, for your financial institution, allowing them to do more for you sooner. The second product that we have under the financing umbrella is direct financing. So there are times when, unfortunately, even with the guarantee program, we are unable to get your bank to do what it is that you need them to do. So in situations like that, where it makes sense, where it's in support of an export, we can actually lend money to you directly. So that's the financing umbrella. At the highest of levels, the way I like to leave that is this. If you're running into an issue putting together your financing or putting your financing together, give someone like myself or my colleague Dan a call, and we'll most likely be able to help. The third umbrella is basically performance security guarantees. So if you're ever in a situation where you have to issue a standby letter of credit, that could be used to support an advance payment from a buyer, that can be used as a performance guarantee, a bid bond, or for a supplier guarantee. For those of you who don't know, a letter of credit is basically an unconditional and irrevocable payment tool issued by your bank to a beneficiary in support of a project that you're working on. Because those tools are so liquid, when your bank issues one of those, they'd love to lock down an equivalent amount of your cash or your operating line. So that can create some serious working capital constraints for your company. In a situation like that, we step in, we provide the bank a AAA sovereign guarantee for 100% of your ask. They can then release that cash that they've taken as security, and you can operate as need be. We also provide that same program in support of foreign exchange facilities as well with your bank. The last category of services that we have, and I know I'm probably talking too much, so I'm going to speed through this, is our knowledge services and products. So if you are looking at a new market or considering expanding in a market and you run into a problem and you don't know the answer to that question, you can reach out to EDC, and we're more than happy to do some research for you. If all goes well, get you the answers that you're looking for, or at the very least, introduce you to somebody who can help. So highest of levels, Export Development Canada is all about helping you go to the next level in those international markets, ensuring that you have the financing that you require to grow your company, to get it to where you need it to be. And then we protect your assets in those jurisdictions, we protect your sales, and we also assist with all of those performance guarantees and knowledge-based questions we had talked about. So that said, I'm pleased to pass the microphone to Pam.
Good afternoon. My name is Pamela Rudolph. I'm an Export Development Executive at Nova Scotia Business Inc., and I am very pleased to be here today. Nova Scotia Business Inc. is a crown corporation of the province of Nova Scotia with a number of responsibilities, but the two main ones are investment and export. And I'm going to speak today about what we do on the export side to support companies who want to learn how to export or to expand and grow the markets that they already have. We do so many things, and I know I only have a short space of time, so I'm going to kind of speed through it. But a lot of my colleagues are here today. If you NSBI want to raise your hands, so you can see they're kind of everywhere. So we're all here to answer any questions that you might have afterwards. Most of what we do with our clients is to encourage them to either start considering exporting or to actually work with them to overcome any barriers that they're currently having in new markets. Our team has sector specialists in agri-food, ICT, seafood, beverages, ocean technology, infrastructure, and a multitude of other areas as well. The focus that we have with our clients is mostly letting them know what we have available at NSBI, but also the people at the table here are very important export partners, and they're all part of the bigger solution that we provide to companies. We do through one of our divisions, we do what's known as trade market intelligence. So just to kind of do it maybe in a logical order, we have a new company who has a product that is definitely exportable, doesn't know anything, but has an idea or a sense of some preliminary information or preliminary research that they've done that they believe that a particular market may be useful. We can walk them through what we call a trade market intelligence exercise, where they can get research done at a secondary level with our teams that help them decide whether or not to move forward. We do trade missions, which will sometimes take the company into market. We have a multitude of programs that give financial assistance to help companies participate in trade missions, participate in trade shows, and travel into various marketplaces. We do a lot of export training, workshop, specialty training, just a whole range of products and services that we offer to take the company from considering exporting to working with a specialized consultant to help them overcome a particular barrier that they may have in a particular market by using some of our programs that our regional development team offers as well. I could go on and babble, and that's what I feel like I'm doing right now. But the sectors that we deal with in the services side, although we have some proactive ones, we deal with all companies in the province of Nova Scotia who are looking to expand their market or to learn how to do exporting. Nova Scotia Business Inc. also releases a trade bulletin. I encourage anybody and everybody who is not signed up to it to please sign up to at our nsbi.ca website. That bulletin gets released every Tuesday afternoon, and it describes all the workshops, trade missions, trade shows, and educational programs that we have available and upcoming. And on that, I'll pass the mic to Darlene.
Thank you, Pam. Good afternoon, or is it afternoon? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darlene Sponigal, and I'm an International Business Development Officer with the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. We're an organization, a federal agency that is responsible for economic development in Atlantic Canada, and we're very fortunate to work with all our partners here in the room. Our mandate, we're under what is called the Atlantic Growth Strategy. One of those 4 pillars under that strategy is the trade and investment pillar. And that's what I'll talk to you about today a little bit more as well. But basically what we do is help companies start, grow, and expand. That includes any company that is looking to export for the first time, a company that is looking to expand their market in an existing market, or those of you who want to diversify into a new market. So in doing that, we can provide a range of different services, products and services, I should say. We provide funding to third-party organizations as well as direct to business. And the reason why I bring up the third-party organizations is you should be aware, if you're not aware already, that under the Atlantic ATIGA, the Atlantic Trade and Investment Growth Agreement, which is a federal provincial agreement, we have 10 sector teams that we work with collaboratively, and all your industry, 10 of those industry associations are represented on that. So if you're not a member of an industry association, you should be, because a lot of the initiatives that they undertake are funded through our organizations. So they could be leading trade missions. They also have intelligence with respect to your certain sector. Take advantage of that if you're able to. The direct to business assistance, we can provide you with repayable loans going into market if you wish to do that. If you're preparing for market, however, you might want to take advantage of something called LearnSphere, a third-party organization that we fund as well to help you with your business planning or your e-commerce side of things. Also, we collaborate with our partners on events such as this. And we also collaborate with our partners on trade missions into market. If any of you are into market and realize that you have challenges, for example, with certifications, that is something that we can look at as well. Not everyone has the right certifications going into a specific market, so that's something you'll learn as you go along. But our biggest advice to you is to be prepared, and that means all your upfront research, and Mr. Wood mentioned that this morning. If anything he could do better would be better prepared in going forward. And for your awareness, we are located throughout Atlantic Canada. We have officers that are sector specific. We also have officers that are trade and investment related. So contact us. Our door is open, as well as our partners' doors, and come knocking on any one of them, and we're there to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Stéphane Crépeau, I'm a trade commissioner based here, like in Halifax. I think you've heard a bit what we do, like this morning. Like we're a big organization. As mentioned earlier, we're part, like in all the 160 plus. I stopped counting. Maybe we're 170 now. Like we've opened a couple new office abroad. But we're a big organization, so we have represented around the world. We have people in Ottawa developing, as we've seen like earlier, like all the CPTPP and policies and everything. And we have the regional offices across Canada. Just to mention a bit how we work, like and our department work. We're part of Global Affairs Canada. The Trade Commissioner's service is really, I like to think, like the business part, like of the department. So we work closely with the companies. So and you've seen a couple of our programs we've had, like can exports. But keep in mind, like that I would say that our major asset is really that we have people on the ground everywhere. So almost everywhere. So that's basic to keep in mind. We have experienced people there. We have Canadian people that are locally engaged there, that are from the country. They understand the culture. They understand how to do business in the country. As part of the regional office, we are a small office in Atlantic Canada, based here in Halifax, but we have also people in the other provinces. So we're basically like, because again, we're a big organization. We're your first point of contact and try to help you to navigate through the intricacies of our organization and our consulate and other trade commissioners. So the more like we know about like what we do, like my day-to-day work is to work with company and aerospace and defense and ocean tech. So the more I know about the company, the more I know where they're going. It's easier for me after that to make a good introductions to a colleague who keep you informed, like maybe a business opportunities coming from colleagues and stuff. So really use our services here because we were able to have a better understanding and put you in the right direction. Basically that's what it is. Again, we have like a lot of programs, a lot of involved in a lot of things. But if you are getting mixed up a bit, just let me know or one of our colleagues, and we'll be happy to help you on that.
So that was a lot of talk about government and crown corporation programs and services. Sounds like there's overlap and duplication, but you'd be surprised that there really isn't. We all play in various parts of the export journey of a company, and it's important to know who's your point of contact and who can help you at certain points as you move along in terms of exporting. As I think Darlene and Pam both alluded to, there's no wrong door when dealing with the partners. We all know each other pretty well. This is a fairly small place, and we're very familiar with what each organization offers and trade missions maybe that someone is organizing. So when you meet with anyone from any of the organizations, part of what we do as a group is that we like to refer people around to other things that are going on to make sure that companies in the province are getting the full advantage of everything that's available to them, because we all have various parts to play in this puzzle. So we look at exporting as maybe 4 different areas. There's the export planning, which we've talked about, and various players play in that role. There's the going to market. So once you've planned and you're ready to go, there's the how do I get there? Is there financing? Is there programming? Are there things going on that I can jump into to access the market? There's financing. Dan talked a lot about EDC. BDC also has financing. So maybe you need insurance, or maybe you need to grow your company a little bit to access that market. And then there's the whole market entry, and Stefan talked about that a little bit. We have people on the ground through the Trade Commissioner Service. So once you're ready to go and you're going into the market, there are people there that are ready to welcome you, like you heard that this morning, so they can answer your questions. Or maybe you're going as part of a trade mission that's going, and again, it will all loop around using the Trade Commissioner Service abroad. So that's a bit of an overview. There is a lot, but I would welcome any questions that anyone had at this point in time. I know it's been a long morning and it's a lot of information. So any questions? Oh, we have one. We have a question. Do we have a mic there? Thanks, Jill.
Hi, thank you. Leo Muse, I work with the Nova Scotia Seafood Alliance. And of course, we've heard a lot about seafood today, and I just want to say we appreciate the work every one of you do up there at that table, because all of our members use at least 1 or 2 of you all the time. But what I haven't heard today, and I just want to, maybe this is more of a comment than a question, I haven't heard about the regulators, the federal regulators, in particular Canadian Food Inspection Agency and DFO, because every one of these countries in Asia, they may require a health certificate, they may require an export certificate, and on it goes. So what I'm thinking is there a role for the federal regulators in an extension type of work to help us through the regulations? Because trust me, if you call either one of those agencies right now and ask them how I get my lobsters into Korea, they'll tell you to go to their website, and then you'll spend days and pond days. So what I'm thinking is you know, the trade agreements are terrific. They really work. They really are. They open the door. But I just like to make note that we have a little bit of work to do at home to make it easy, because we will take the path of least resistance. And if it's easier to put that lobster on a truck and send it to Boston than try and find an airplane, try and find the right permits, try and find the customer on the other end, yeah, you get what I'm saying. So I would suggest that, you know, federally, when you're talking to your colleagues, possibly some type of an extension type service to help through the regulatory process would be helpful.
I'm going to let Jay take that one.
Thank you for that. You're right. The role of the regulators is really, really important to this. First, I'll talk about it from a couple of angles. First, when we negotiate sanitary and phytosanitary rules that are part of an FTA, we do it as a shared lead between my organization, Global Affairs Canada, and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. So they're at the table with us when we're negotiating the FTA rules. So they have a role there. And one of the reasons why that's really important is because they help to set the tone to ensure that it is as facilitative as possible, that they are working with the regulators on the other side to make it as easy as possible to get products into that. By the same token, they also help us to set up the collaborative mechanisms so that they have direct contacts with their counterparts in the foreign countries so that they can actually resolve issues for you as they come about. In terms of getting your product into the market and getting certification and getting negotiating market access and things of that nature, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency actually works very, very closely with both Global Affairs Canada and with Agriculture Canada. The Market Access Secretariat at Agriculture Canada was set up specifically to answer questions and to help respond to questions, so that when there are questions about how to access the market, that's usually your best option, is to go through the Market Access Secretariat. They'll work with their colleagues in MISB, or so the Market Industry Services Branch. I always call it MISB. So they'll work with them directly, but the Market Access Secretariat is there, and they've recently undergone a reorganization so that they have been brought under common leadership between CFIA and Agriculture Canada, so that they can really target and pull in a lot more of the resources to make them available to Canadian exporters. So there's no sacrificing what's on the Canadian side of their mandate, which is to protect Canadians, but they have dedicated additional resources to making sure that exports can be facilitated. So it's never going to be an easy process. You're right, it is difficult, but they have taken it consciously and they've reorganized the organization so that there are new resources available to you. So I would strongly suggest, and we can talk afterwards about how to access the Market Access Secretariat at AFC, because they really are excellent.
And maybe I can just add one other thing. For Korea, if you have that kind of question, you just need to send us an email at the email address that I gave in my presentation, because we have 3 of our trade commissioners who work on agri-food, and probably about a third of their work is on market access. I can assure you that CFIA and AAFC are working very hard to resolve border issues that arise on a regular basis, and they communicate regularly with our trade commissioners to do that work. So our trade commissioners can tell you about the documentation requirements you need to get into the Korean market. And also, if you need to access somebody in Canada, a specialist at CFIA for some reason, our trade commissioners know who's responsible for Korea and who's working on a particular issue, so can maybe make that connection a bit more quickly.
Sorry, Japan always likes to one-up Korea, so I'll just add to that. In Tokyo, we're actually very lucky. We actually have a CFIA resource at the embassy, and she works very hard to facilitate market access. So if you have issues coming to Japan, please contact me, and I can put you directly in touch with her. She works very closely with companies to help them export directly into Japan. And I think you can correct me, Jay, but there are CFIA resources, similar ones throughout the world, in Europe, and I think in Beijing as well, but I'm not sure otherwhere else. But you can always contact them directly or have your members contact us directly.
Well, thank you for that, but I think the issue is probably more on our side than elsewhere. For instance, if a quick sale comes up where you need a certificate and it's Easter weekend, you can forget that, and there are parts of this province, unfortunately, that do not have high-speed internet access. So, we've got a lot of work to do at home. I appreciate you folks are working hard, and that's, that's terrific, and it's very helpful. But we do have some work to do at home, and we didn't talk about demographics here, but we know a lot of our owners and members of our group are post-retirement age, and they're, new technology sometimes can be a challenge on multiple reasons. So we're working on it as a group home here, but I appreciate the contacts, and we will ask when we have the question. But just remember, these animals will always take the path of least resistance, and by the fact that these trade agreements have given us a tariff advantage over particularly the United States is terrific. I hope the media have left, but I just want to say the best economic development agent we've had in the lobster business in the last few months was none other than Donald J. Trump himself, because when he started that row with China in particular, all of a sudden we're like 43% better. Never mind 5% or 10% or 8%. So it's these trade agreements are really, really important. And the same thing applies in Europe through CETA, where we've gained that advantage. So our job, I guess, is to take advantage of it. You've done your job. Now we have to do it.
Thank you, Leo. Those were all good points. Thanks very much. Okay, so that concludes our panel. Unless we have another question, we have another question. Mr. Getty.
Hi, my name's Gerald Keddy. I'm a Christmas tree grower with Christmas Tree Council of Nova Scotia. Somewhat along the line of what Leo was saying, but there's a lot of expertise here in the room. So if you're an exporter, you're already exporting internationally, you already have a domestic market, where do you start? Do you go to, in Nova Scotia, we go to NSBI? Do we go directly? Obviously, we're not ready to go to the Trade Commissioner Services yet, but where do you start? There's a lot of information and a lot of doors to knock on, so.
Pam, can I turn that one to you?
Nova Scotia Business Inc. I consider to be the starting point when it comes to companies in Nova Scotia looking for information on how to export. Right next to you, Gerald, is my colleague Patrick. Patrick, do you want to put your hand up? Yes. So Patrick, Amanda, and a few others are all part of our regional development team. Our province is divided up, segmented sort of kind of by county. You're located in Lunenburg? Yes. So I believe Melinda is your go-to person. So we recommend that companies find their local regional development person and start with them. From there, understanding where you are in the export kind of growth chain is where we send you next. We've dealt with a lot of the Christmas tree growers associations throughout the province over the last number of years, just more recently, a couple of years ago, back into the Boston market. Done a lot of research. We talked a little bit earlier about the Trade Market Intelligence Program, understanding that part of the biggest challenge that the tree growers are having is facing the Fraser fir in the U.S. and taking that market share away. So I say yes, come to NSBI. There's a tremendous amount of information that our TMI team has recovered and is stored and is available to be shared with all companies as far as market research and things like that. So I'll come over and see you shortly when we're done here, and I'll make sure you get the right connections. Okay?
Yeah, I just want to add that sometimes it could be confusing for companies because we're all here, like, so who should I go first or what should I do? Again, just keep in mind we're all working very closely and we refer to each other all the time, like, so because we all have something different to bring. And I say, okay, maybe you should go talk to Darlene, maybe you should go talk to Pam or all the other partners. So in doubt, just pick one of us and we'll redirect you to in the right direction.
And what we've done in the past as well is collaborate on telephone calls. So, if there's a need that you would like to speak to us all at once, there's a possibility of setting that up as well so that you have one door opened for everyone at the same time, if that helps you. And the other thing I would like to add is that if you're just starting into the export game, please take advantage of some of the Forum for International Trade training that NSBI and ACOA collaborate on and have throughout the province, because those are good training courses to get your start and gain some of that knowledge that you're going to require when it comes to even the acronyms, because you're going to get run over by the acronyms. So I'd just like to add that and take advantage of as much training as you possibly can, because we as partners all collaborate on this so that you're best aware of what opportunities are up and coming. And also, just for your awareness, we have the new exporter type initiatives that happen as well that will take you into market. So if you're looking at something like that, there's opportunities in that way too.
All right. Well, that concludes this morning and early afternoon's session. Thank you to our panelists. That was really, really good. Everyone will be available in the Export Cafe, and there's lots of great people. So latch on to someone to have a conversation, to learn about things that they may be doing or products or services they have that may help you. So we're going to have lunch, and it will be served out where the break food was earlier this morning. Before we leave for lunch, I really want to encourage people to come back after lunch. I know sometimes people have things they have to do in the afternoon, but if you could come back just for some networking, it's a great opportunity. We have people here from all over the world that are here to talk to you today. The minister will come back as well. He's going to say a few remarks, and he's really eager to meet some people and talk to them about what they're doing in terms of international trade. So take advantage of that. We'll be starting the Export Cafe Trade Commissioner Service Open House at 1:15. I think it's just across the hall, am I right? It's going to be in here. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It's going to be in here. And so go grab some lunch, maybe sit with someone that you didn't sit with earlier today, and make some new acquaintances in the room, and I look forward to seeing you back at 1:15. Thank you.